Being bold enough to believe we can do something is the first step to achieving our goals, no matter how far-fetched they may initially appear. The human body is stronger than we realize and can endure more than we give it credit for. There is a saying, and depending on the source, it goes something like this: dream, believe, achieve. Or imagine, believe, achieve. Both of these sayings, however cliched they may be, are very true. Without imagination or vision, we cannot think of what we wish to do. Without belief in ourselves, we simply cannot do it. This whole book is about my story of tough physical challenges that all began with an idea. I want you to join me on the journey as I take you from the initial spark in my mind all the way to the end of my challenge. A little of introduction about me. I imagine those of you who are reading this will have either met me or watched some of my challenge videos or bought some of my exercise programs. I'd like to give a bit of background just so you know the sort of guy you've just bought a book off, and hopefully this won't lead to an influx of returns. At the time of writing this book, I am 34 years old and working as a full-time personal trainer and a part-time challenge enthusiast. I was tempted to add aspiring author to the list, but I will leave you to be the judge of that. I grew up in the seaside town of Penarth, which is in South Wales, UK, right next to Cardiff. I was never particularly interested in sports or fitness as a teenager, and I was certainly not gifted with many skills. Quite often, during physical education class, I was the last to be picked in football because nobody wanted me on their team. I don't blame them, because quite frankly, I was crap. In fact, when eventually I was picked for the side, despite my protests, I would usually be shoved in goals by the team captain, only for them to yell at me when a goal went past me. "I told you I was bad in goals," would be my response. On a cold winter morning, with the wind blowing against my skinny bare chicken legs, the teacher caught me messing about and not paying any attention to him. I was in trouble. For the purpose of storytelling, I'd love to detail exactly what was said, but alas, I was not listening. With an angry look in his eyes, the PE teacher barked at me to run 10 laps of the pitch as punishment, while the rest of the class played football. Sprinting off to do my laps, I realised that I actually preferred this, and made a conscious effort to double my efforts of clowning around in future classes so that I could be punished further. It took a long time for me to discover my passion. I always felt like a bit of an odd one out. My first taster of what was to come, when I was around 15 years old, some of the kids as a prank decided it would be completely hilarious to fill my school bag with rocks and bricks. To their dismay, I saw it as a challenge, acting like I didn't notice as I picked the bag up, the straps struggling under the load. I kept the rocks in my pack all week, walking home with it each day, despite the damage it was doing to my school books and my spine, as I was told. During this time, I established an even greater lack of interest in sports and an absolute disdain for any kind of organised extracurricular activity. I began finding any excuse to bunk off my PE class. Left my trainers at home, sir. Forgot my kit today. Bad ankle, sir. Sometime between the ages of 10 and 15 years, as an impressionable young man, I distinctly remember reading an article in the local newspaper about a lad from the area who had completed the super tough Royal Marines training and had been awarded his Green Beret. The story described how the Royal Marines underwent the longest and hardest military training in the world, and only the fittest and toughest could make it. Their symbol, a simple commando dagger emblazoned on the side of their sleeve, was like a beacon for me. This was the seed which sowed in my mind, dormant for many years. As my older teenage years were spent spectacularly flying off my skateboard, downing straight bottles of brandy, which I don't recommend, playing guitar terribly in a punk band, and meeting up with my friends to whoop them on Halo Combat Evolved, my younger years were spent in the park playing armies with toy guns. My brother and I would play soldiers in the woods, and on the surface it was just a game. However, in my mind, I was already there. While we would run around, our gazes fixed through the flimsy plastic scopes on our fun-sized firearms, I would imagine myself wading through rivers, the slimy water submerging my legs, the beads of sweat seeping down my dark green face, plastered with camouflage paint as I stealthily negotiated hostile territory on some secret mission in the dense, humid jungle. I said previously I was not blessed with any skills, but I soon realised that if I completely focused my attention and all my effort into something that I was really interested in, I could blow it out of the water. During my high school years, I certainly was not blessed with good looks or much confidence. Huge red spots littered my face for years, leaving deep, pitting scars. I was to receive a now banned treatment that, in a bid to clear me of my acne, made my skin peel off. It flaked away into a pile of dead, dry skin on my desk. But the acne remained unscathed. Years and years of hospital visits to see doctors, dermatologists, laser surgeons and plastic surgeons all remained fruitless. The spots were too deeply embedded into my skin, and they were not going away. To feel a bit better about myself, I began lifting weights. Not real weights. I would fill up old juice bottles with water to create makeshift dumbbells and perform bicep curls and press-ups in my bedroom. My mum encouraged me to go circuit training with her at the local leisure centre, and I enjoyed training and seeing the results it was beginning to have on my body. While we went only once a week, it was something I thoroughly enjoyed. During my final year in high school, summer was in full swing and sports day was rapidly approaching. As mentioned previously, I had absolutely no interest in organised activities, so during a team meeting, I made zero input and kept myself quiet in the corner. I was never the fastest runner, had very little skill, so I was not expecting to be picked for any events, nor did I particularly want to be. As expected, the athletic boys and girls were all up for taking part, and the same small group of athletes were picked to participate in the events. The teachers, observing this, quickly made a rule stating that individuals are only allowed to participate in a maximum of 2 events. This meant a change in strategy and left a few events with no contenders, namely the 300 metres and the relay. Referencing the 300 metres, the team captain suggested, "Max can do it." Whether he saw some potential in me or I was just the first person that came to mind who wasn't slow, I do not know. But I agreed to run this race, plus the relay, and it was all set. Sports day arrived. It was a lush, warm, sunny day with a slight breeze. In the UK, we don't get many days like this anymore. The events were run. The 100 metres, 200 metres, and all that was left was the 300 metres and the relay. The call came for the 300 metre runners to get ready. We formed up on the track and walked our way into our starting positions. I was in the outside lane. I felt isolated from everyone who could not see any of the other runners as they were all behind me. I had no strategy. Adrenaline coursed through my veins and my heart rate accelerated. I composed myself and focused my thoughts, awaiting the starting gun. I was just going to have to run as fast as I could for as long as I could. I didn't want to let the side down. A loud bang erupted as the started gun broke the tense silence. I bolted, pumping my arms and driving my legs, slamming my heels down violently into the floor to propel myself forwards with my toes. I reached top speed as the track began to bend. I kept focusing my gaze directly in front of me, following the curve of the track. I kept waiting to see the other runners. Any second now, and they'll be there to my left, I told myself. Then, just keep up with them. I was running as fast as I could, and I just kept pushing, kept breathing, maximum effort. The lactic acid built up, my muscles hurt and my heart pounded. I was not going to stop or slow down. I hit the final bend without slowing. All that was left was the final straight. Still, no runners to my left. I maintained the pace and pelted over the finish line in first place, not only winning the race by far, but also achieving a sports day record. This was when I realised that even though I was not the fittest or the fastest, if I pushed myself and did not give in to the overwhelming desire to stop, then I could be successful in whatever I was trying to achieve. In 2004, I was dossing around between different college courses and working full-time in the kitchen of a restaurant. At the time, the advert for the Royal Marines seemed to be absolutely everywhere. Billboards, TV, and in magazines. Whenever I took a trip to the cinema, there it was. 99.99% need not apply. They tell me not to bother filling out the application form. It beckoned me. I wanted the challenge. I wanted to be part of something elite. I applied, went through the recruitment process, worked on my fitness, and eventually attended the potential Royal Marines course. The PRMC was the final hurdle to beginning recruit training. A 3-day selection test of non-stop physicality. They had high standards, and the course had an equally high dropout rate. Back in those days, we knew very little about what this course entailed. We would get appointment slots at the Armed Forces Careers Office, and while we were waiting to be seen by an advisor, an old VHS video cassette would play on a TV in the corner. The screen would depict guys in military fatigues, khaki bottoms and boots covered head to toe in mud running around, jumping over obstacles and climbing along ropes. I remember speaking with a couple of guys who had recently attended the PRMC and had failed. They were in the careers office trying to organise a second and final attempt. I would hear rumours of the so-called bottom field and how the warm-up before the assault course would go on forever and the guys would just be forced to quit. I was told the press-ups and pull-ups were done the hard way, but with no actual explanation of what this meant. The only advice I received from a failed candidate was, whatever you do, just don't stop. In January 2005, my time would come. I was on the train to Limestone Commando, where I would spend the next 3 days experiencing life in the Royal Marines. Concurrently, the Royal Marines would be looking at me closely to see if I was a suitable candidate. These 3 days would push me further outside my physical comfort zone than I had ever experienced before. We were greeted outside the gym by a physical training instructor who was quite possibly the buffest guy I had ever met in my life at this point. It was explained that our t-shirts had to be tucked in at all times during the PRMC, so that those who were to be sick would have to do it inside their tops. This meant that it wouldn't make a mess on the floor and they wouldn't be able to stop. Over the next 2 days we were tested in the gym, running in the lanes and the dreaded bottom field. The bottom field followed by the assault course caused a few dropouts due to sprained ankles and dislocated shoulders. We would try and rest during the night to recover for the day, but being woken up at 5 AM to run around a courtyard, being held in stress positions and doing press-ups for seemingly forever did not help. The test that caught me on most was Gym Test 2. This was described as a series of individual and team stances to test you physically and mentally. Sounded easy enough. The PTI in this one, however, was the angriest and scariest man I had ever met in my life. There were around 45 of us on the course. We were all stood to attention in 3 neat ranks outside the gym. While the PTI gave us our brief, we were told that we were not allowed to giggle, talk, fart, scratch, or even wipe the sweat off our face whilst we were in the gym. What started off as a gradual warm-up quickly accelerated to a full-on session at maximum intensity. We were not allowed to stand still, not allowed to itch, fidget, or even wipe the sweat off our brow. Our focus was on performing every exercise at lightning speed. We had to sprint everywhere, perform a series of small circuit sessions at 100% effort, hurling ourselves along wooden beams, performing sprints, single leg bounds, medicine ball throws, sled pulls, and even more sprints. We were being watched from all angles. If we didn't give 100%, we were told, we would not be successful. Our rest positions between sets of circuits and sprints was to double mark time. A high knee sprint at 100% effort on the spot. Our knees were never high enough, and we were never going fast enough. The PTI was in my face like a frenzied Rottweiler, screaming at me to go faster, harder, higher. Nothing I did was good enough for him. I was about to black out. The session ended. I was left gasping for air, barely able to hold myself up for the stretches. While the PRMC was tough, I was successful, being awarded a t-shirt at the end that stated potential 0.01% was a very proud moment for me. A PTI had told me that 1,000 other applicants had failed to get to the position we were going to be in. Other than a couple of races in school, I'd never really won much in the past. I wasn't a confident kid, but this made me feel good. I went home, quit my job, and doubled up on my training. Much of 2005 was then spent at the Commando Training Centre Royal Marines. It was a tough year with many highs and lows, but it was also one of the best years of my life. I had grown up without a father, and the Royal Marines provided a series of male role models for me to look up to. Life just felt magical at this time. I was outdoors a lot, I met new people, made new friends, was fitter than ever, experienced so many different things and learnt so much. I completed the 33 weeks of commando training as an original troop member. What this means is that you stay with the original troop you joined and complete training with them. A lot of people get injured or fail certain parts of the course and they get pushed back to redo parts of training with another troop. I would serve until May 2009, seeing active service on Operation Telic 3 times. After I left, there was some tough years ahead. It was a long road filled with many life challenges and obstacles. It took a long time, but eventually I got to where I wanted to be, which was working as a security operative. I had a great time working in security, in the UK, Europe, and also maritime anti-piracy, where I made some lifelong friends. In 2014, I decided the security industry was no longer for me, and began working in fitness, as well as doing some security jobs until eventually I stopped doing security. The money wasn't quite what I was used to in security, so I ended up working for the police as a control room operator, a job I enjoyed for about 4 years and again made some great friends. Then I switched back to working in fitness and I remain doing that to this day. Although I have certainly branched out in the field rather than just doing gym shifts here and there and group exercise sessions in the park like when I started. Now as a fitness enthusiast I make YouTube videos where I give fitness advice and attempt to document some of my training and physical challenges. My aim now is to try to enjoy my life as best I can, explore my passions, keep training hard, and give myself little goals along the way. I wanted to compile my thoughts and memories regarding some of my favourite challenges and adventures over the last couple of years. This book is written in my own words. While I am not a professional author or accomplished writer, I want to tell my story of some of my most proud accomplishments and physical efforts. This book will also serve as a record of many of my youthful pastimes for me to dwell on when I am old and decrepit. Between 2019 to 2021, I completed a few charity events and received some amazing compliments from many people. But I want to highlight that I am not some kind of superhero, and I do not possess special abilities. I do not have a large sponsor or a huge budget to throw into making these challenges possible. I am just a normal man working full-time who has a passion for extreme physical adventure, a solid work ethic, and a certain level of stubbornness. While the hard physical effort was undertaken by me, I recognise that a lot of these adventures would not have been possible without the help of my friends, for whom I am eternally grateful. My aim was always to spend as little money as possible in completing these challenges correctly, safely, with consideration to the environment and other people, whilst maximising the amount of money I can raise for my chosen charities. Whilst I am talking about my own physical accomplishments, this book isn't me trying to showboat or say how good I am. I'm not here racing anyone or trying to set world records. I recognise and believe that the only person I am challenging and competing against is myself. The journey often has a more lasting impact on an individual than the actual result. Each chapter will be presented as a short story that can be read in isolation or as part of a longer journey, from my lowest moments to some of my very best. I will also include some of my training theories and principles that I have relied upon over the years to increase strength and fitness. These principles have been fairly consistent, regardless of the goal, and been forged through decades of training, hard work, study, trial and error. I believe that everyone on this planet has the ability to achieve things that are great, whether through physical challenges, sport, arts, business, or any other accomplishment. We are all individuals with our own unique interests. I believe that everyone has a story. This is mine.